Good morning. I am here at beautiful Oil Creek State Park on this gorgeous September day. I just finished visiting Pithole City, and now I'm going to be waiting for the train to take me up to Drakewell Museum and Park. My plan is to get off the train at Drakewell and ride the 9.7-mile bike trail down here to Petroleum Center. And as you can see, this bridge is closed to vehicle traffic. However, it is open to foot and bicycle traffic. You must dismount, means get off your bike before crossing the bridge. So I'm just slowly pushing my bike across the bridge.
It was a beautiful day to explore the valley that changed the world. Colonel Drake struck oil in this area in 1859. The phrase, "they struck oil," was heard and thousands of people poured into the valley. Boom towns appeared overnight. Ordinary people poured into the valley with high hopes of making a fortune. In fact, many people became millionaires during the oil boom. Ironically, many people lost their fortunes. The boom towns disappeared as fast as they appeared. Once the oil dried up, the towns were abandoned. Fire swept through the hastily built structures, leaving nothing behind. Nature has reclaimed these boom towns. So sit back and relax, and let's explore the valley that changed the world.
During the journey today, we will be passing by two other bridges like that, Miller Farm Bridge and Jersey Bridge. And straight ahead is another ghost town, Petroleum Center. We'll be taking a look at that town here very soon. These are the steps of the George Bissell Bank. The bank sat on this corner in the former town of Petroleum Center. And looks like they took out a lot of the markers because they're repairing the sidewalk. And this town was known as the Sodom and Gomorrah of the West, meaning that anything went. Felt good, did it. There was no law, no morals, a lot of drinking, gambling, prostitution. Looking straight ahead was once Washington Street. Today, in 2023, it's nice and quiet, and all you can hear are the sounds of nature. But in the 1860s and 70s, this was anything but quiet. Even the 49ers, who had panned through gold in California, came to Oil Creek and complained that the conditions here were crazier than they'd ever seen. So you can just imagine what they were like. Right now the markers are out, but there are markers all along Washington Street depicting where the historic structures once were. And like Pithole, these structures were ravaged by fire. There are tons of bar fights, riots, shootings. Not much has changed in 150 years, unfortunately. This is where I'm going to be boarding the train here in about an hour. This is Petroleum Center. And I'll just take my bike up onto that platform and board the train. So this video will be filled with history, scenery, and fun. Here I am waiting for the train to arrive. It's so exciting. And this just lets the conductor know that there is somebody waiting on the platform.
You guys want to bring put it right up here, maybe?
We're on our way.
Standard through bolts are 5/8 diameter bolt. Down through here, either 10 or 12 inch bolt is all you would need.
Some ruins.
purchases and sales of his land, and another $1 million in royalties. He became the world's first oil millionaire. Start underway back towards Titusville. I see our folks in car 62 are all seated. Thank you very much. Have some wandering going on in 60 still. 5 and 59, still waiting for some people to have a seat. All right, thank you for your patience. It's now safe to get up and move about the train again. The railway post office has reopened.
I'm now at Drakewell Museum and Park. I just got off the train. Bye, train! It was an enjoyable ride. Now I have a 9.7 mile ride back to Petroleum Center, and I'm looking forward to it. And it's my first time riding on this trail, so I'm so excited. So when you see this video, you'll be seeing what I'm seeing for the first time. Looks like they're having a farm to fork event here. Wine list. Who's doing it? Broken Straw Valley Winery. I have a huge garden and every day's farm to table at my house. There you go. And that is the first class car. It's air conditioned, by the way. Washball Cannonball. I am at Jersey Bridge. This bridge was restored in 1998. And do you know this bridge survived a flood and a fire? In the 1890s, there was a flood that swept through the valley. And since the water was so polluted, the oil actually caught Oil Creek on fire. So this bridge survived a fire and flood. Well, I'm about to begin the 9.7 mile bike trail. I do have a video on Drakewell Museum and Park. I will go ahead and type the title in the video. So just keep an eye open for that. When leaving Drakewell Museum and Park, there is a slight grade. But after that, it should be all downhill to Petroleum Center. So I'm actually pushing my bike up the first part of the trail. It's just too steep of a ride. And my bike doesn't have all the fancy gears. It's an old-fashioned cruiser bike with foot brakes. So along this ride, be prepared to see relics of the past and wildlife. We may see deer, hear all kinds of birds, and maybe see a snake. The Girard hiking trail loops around Oil Creek State Park. It's about 36 miles long. You will hike by various waterfalls such as Pioneer Falls and Miller Falls, and there are 2 shelters to camp out overnight. So far this trail is shaded, so that makes for a nice ride on a hot summer day. And there's another section of the Girard Trail. Looks like they built the hillside up to prevent erosion. Okay, let's get on our way. This trail is asphalt, so you want to make sure you watch out for bumps. It's asphalt like the Allegheny River Trail. And so far this one hasn't been too bumpy. Down below is Drakewell Museum and Park. Oil Creek sits down over the cliff. We just have some beautiful woods. A lot of hemlocks. Evergreen trees. Deciduous trees. Nice variety. And it's the second bench I saw along the trail. I am not familiar with this trail. This is my first time I'm riding it. Not sure what that noise is. Here's a nice view of the valley below. I feel like a kid on Christmas morning whenever they open up their gifts. Oh, like the excitement of what's under the wrapping paper, especially if it's a big box. This is how I feel when I make every bend. What lies around the next bend. And you can see the tracks. We were just on the train and it was such a lovely ride. So far I went 1 mile. So this is what the mile markers look like. Every trail is a little bit different. It's nice and quiet. You don't hear the hum of traffic. Just hear nature. That's interesting. Secondary recovery. Quote, secondary recovery was the term applied to the various methods used to further extract oil from a well after it ceased to produce. There are historical markers all along the trail, so take time to read them. If you don't feel like reading them, take a picture and refer back to it at a later time. Brewer, Watson and Company Dam. So I guess at one time there was a dam. So they would build dams and they would cause artificial floods. And that way they could get their boats downstream. And that way oil can be transported south. But whenever the Oil City Railroad was completed in 1866, that put an end to the artificial floods. You didn't have to rely on the weather for transporting oil anymore. At mile marker number 2, there's an area with a picnic table and another marker. Boughton. So this was the site of lower mill of Brewer, Watson and Company, lumber manufacturers. And the workers' homes stood along the hillside above the plant. So I guess this was probably the site. And workers at the plant wore wool clothing even during hot summer months to prevent acid burns, quote. I guess this is a ghost town. Or what? Oh, there's an old foundation. This is all that remains of the ghost town of Boughton. Nature has definitely reclaimed it. And I just read this plant was in operation until 1917. That is when it closed. And unfortunately, the community of Boughton went with it. And these foundations are part of the old acid works. I do know there's a waterfall nearby called Boughton Falls. I've never hiked there, but during dry spells I heard that it's barely flowing. So I guess it's best to see whenever conditions are right, like after a heavy rain. I'm barely pedaling, I'm just coasting. So this is making for a nice, easy ride. This area right here kind of resembles the Butler-Freeport Trail between Monroe Road and Freeport. You have a cliff on one side and a creek on the other side. And by the way, that's Oil Creek. So it almost reminds me of the section of the Butler-Freeport Trail where you have the cliff and Buffalo Creek on the other side. Oh my gosh, there is an uncanny resemblance. Even the hillside looks the same. Looks like I'm in a parallel universe. I mean, if you didn't know, you would think this is the Butler-Freeport Trail. And I will be including a picture of what that section of the trail looks like.
Here's a picture of the Butler-Freeport Trail between Monroe Road and Freeport. There is definitely a resemblance.
There's shelter to get out of the rain, but we don't have to worry about any heavy downpours today because nothing but blue sky, not a cloud in sight. And this marker explains refineries. What's this? So I'll just go ahead and let you pause this, so that way you can read it. I love that they show old photographs. It's just amazing how the land recovered. In the 1860s, this was a wasteland. The trees were cut down, there were mudslides because there's no roots to hold the surface in. But now, nature has reclaimed everything, almost like Moraine State Park. That's a perfect example of reclamation. Because before the park was created, there were strip mines and oil wells. And in the mid-60s, they started building the park. And volunteers planted trees and shrubs. And they did a fantastic job at reclaiming the land. This looks like this could be a nice waterfall if the water was flowing. I'd like to see what it looks like after a heavy rain. And this looks like a little trail. Doesn't have a name on it. But the scenery's just gorgeous with all these beautiful evergreen trees. And down below you got Oil Creek. This looks like a large vernal pond. They're usually filled with water late winter, early spring, and that is where amphibians lay their eggs. Right now we're at the Van Sickle Pipeline, 1865. And we are at the location of the Miller Farm. So I believe there was a village here at one time. Quote, further growth occurred in 1865 when Samuel Van Sickle constructed the first successful pipeline from Pit Hole to here, causing panic among thousands of teamsters who had previously hauled oil. The teamsters were the ones that hauled the oil on horseback. The horses would pull the oil, so whenever they invented the pipeline, a lot of teamsters went into panic because they were in danger of losing their jobs. Quote, Miller Farm's demise came about in the 1870s when the new oil fields of Clarion, Butler, and Armstrong counties were discovered, and oil production declined. Quote. So I'm about the halfway point on the trail. This is Miller Farm Road. And if you go down to the left, it takes you to Miller Farm Bridge. Road's kind of bumpy for my bike, but I will go ahead and include an older picture of the bridge. It's a gravel road. And if you go up the road some, there's a pull-off. You can pull off and do a short hike to Miller Falls. And this road is passable most of the year. I've driven my Chevy Cruze down here and had no problems. However, I would use caution in the middle of winter whenever there's snow and ice. You still want to check for traffic whenever you cross Miller Farm Road. However, it's nothing like the A1A in Cocoa Beach, Florida. You have to cross a light or else you'll get killed. Okay, I'm gonna get on my way. Nice peaceful area to relax. The abutment on this bridge looks really old. And I don't know if this was a railroad at one time. That's something I have to look up. Here's a beautiful view of Oil Creek. Imagine what it's going to look like in a few weeks whenever the leaves start to change. And up yonder is Miller Farm Bridge. That bridge was built in the 1880s and it has a wooden bridge deck. The bridge is really cool to go over. I've already ridden 5 miles so far. The trail is 9.7 miles, so I have about 4.7 miles to go. This was the site of the Schaefer farm. Quote, once the Oil Creek Railroad was completed, Schaefer became an important cooperative and shipping center for the oil industry. Railroad yards and a turntable were located here to turn around locomotives to head toward Titusville and Corey. Schaefer had a short existence. There were 2 fires. The first one broke out in 1865 and the second one broke out in 1866. So I'm guessing the turntable was just down in the brush. Quote, like many other towns, Schaefer ceased to exist when the new oil fields were discovered and local oil production declined. Quote, and that seems to be the trend. That's what they're called, boom and bust cycles. Even though it's not flowing too well, but that is Schaefer Run. And it eventually flows into Oil Creek. Oh my gosh, that is just beautiful. Perfect place to sit down and eat lunch. Got a gorgeous view of Oil Creek. It's a great place to read that romance novel. But just keep track of time because you don't want to be caught out here after dark. To be dead trees like this throughout the park. You can see a lot from the Oil Creek Titusville Railroad. Good, the marker explains it. Quote, the length of the bicycle trail from the Pioneer Bridge to Titusville is actually the old steam engine grade from the 1860s. And this marker is the railroad and grade switch. So you can go ahead and pause it and read the marker at your own leisure. So when the railroad was completed in 1866, the men didn't have to haul barrels of oil on treacherous muddy roads. And back then they traveled by horses. So the horses had to slog through the mud. So according to the marker, Noble and Delamater Row sat at this site. So it was across the creek from this point. And this was about 1860. There was a well. Right now you can't even see the creek because the trees grew up. And both Noble and Delamater became millionaires from this venture, quote. A lot of people made their fortunes in this area, but as fast as they made their fortunes, they also lost all of their money. This trail is pretty much in the woods, but there are some clearings, and whenever there is a clearing, there are beautiful views like this. This area was the home of the Sherman Well. Quote, in 1862, Joel Sherman, a native of Cleveland, came to the Foster Farm along Oil Creek and began drilling oil with the spring pool. Quote, at Drake Well Museum and Park, there's actually an example of a spring pool. And this was the site of the ghost town of Pioneer. It's hard to believe in 1862 there was a population of 2,000 people living in this area. And by 1866, there were 600 barrels of oil per day produced here. But like the rest of the boom towns in this area, it was gone by the 1870s. It's just so hard to believe that this was here. and there's not a trace. Nothing. The forest definitely took over the village of Pioneer. And I do see Pioneer Run. It's kind of hard to see with all the foliage. So a lot of people came to the area because they wanted to get rich quick. And we have a beautiful bridge coming up. And these are the tracks for the Oil Creek Titusville Railroad. We are in the ghost town of Funkville. Play that funky music, play that funky music. As you can tell, singing is not my forte. But this area was owned by Captain A.B. Funk. And he began drilling his first well in 1860. And there were 300 barrels a day. Yeah, singing's not my thing, so I better stick to my day job. And of course, Funkville suffered the same fate as all the other villages around here. When the oil dried up, the people left and went elsewhere. Now here's something you don't see every day, a wooden barge along the bike trail. And these were used to carry barrels of oil down the Allegheny River. 50-gallon wooden barrels flowed down the river. Artificial floodwater was called pond freshets. They needed to artificially create floods to get these barges down the river. On a day like this, whenever the creeks and rivers are really low, it would never make it. It would get caught up on rocks. And since time was money, they had to do what they could to get the oil transported. Adelson's Navy. And here's a look inside. Imagine going from here to Pittsburgh on this. So according to this marker, there is Boyd City and the Oil Exchange Hotel. I can't really make out the marker, but I can make out it completely disappeared by 1873. That seems to be the trend up here. There's a beautiful iron bridge. This is the bridge the Oil Creek and Titusville Railroad goes over. And here's a little grade in the trail. I can make out, okay, the quote, the sturdiest building in Boyd City and one of the finest hotels in the oil region. So there must have been a grand hotel in this location. These old iron bridges are beautiful. They don't make them like they used to. Up on the top of the hill is the Benninghoff Farm tableau. And you can actually hike to that area. There's a pull-off on Pioneer Road, and there's a little trail that leads up to it. And you can see the replicas of the oil derricks. And there is a nice view from up there. So the owner of that farm was a millionaire back in 1865. I wonder what it's like under here whenever the train comes over the bridge. You probably have to be right place, right time. Almost at the end of the trail. It was a beautiful 9.7 mile ride. I got to learn a lot of history. I saw some beautiful scenery. And the best way to see the park is to ride to Drakewell Museum and Park on the Oil Creek and Titusville Railroad and ride back to Petroleum Center on the bike trail. There's so much history and so much beauty, and that's a fantastic way to see the park. So to finish up the trail, I have a short ride on the road. It's been a fun-filled day filled with scenery, history, and fun. I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you for watching.